I always believed that if you raise a child with tenderness, they will remember the scent of your sacrifices. But memory is a fragile thing. Convenient, selective, beautiful, until it isn't. The letter came on a Thursday, folded too neatly to be a mistake. My name typed formally across the envelope. My address correctly written, nothing sloppy or warm. Not my son's handwriting. The law firm's emblem gleamed in gold at the top. They wanted me to come in. Formal estate advisory discussion. I stared at those words for a long time. Every mother knows the difference between news and news you should brace for. I cleaned the kitchen counter twice before I sat down. Not because it was dirty, but because something inside me needed to be busy while the truth crept toward me. Solon didn't call. Of course he didn't. It had been months since we last spoke. Short, polite exchanges that felt like conversations between distant acquaintances, not a mother and son who once shared soup from the same bowl. But I still dressed carefully that morning. Not to impress anyone. Just to honor myself. A soft gray blouse. Black skirt. Shoes that had walked through too many winters. I tied my hair back and pinned the stray curls behind my ear. Simple. Quiet. Clean. The woman Solon is engaged to Varen. Likes clean lines. Likes to pretend she invented them. I walked to the bus stop because my old car had given up 2 months ago and I hadn't bothered to replace it. The sky was pale and overcast, like it was refusing to pick a side. Appropriate. The law firm was glass everywhere, polished marble floors and air conditioning sharp enough to slice through skin. Everything smelled of lemon and distance. The receptionist looked at me the way people do when they're deciding whether to speak slowly. Name. Riona Hale. Please wait over there. She gestured to seats that looked comfortable but weren't made to be sat in long. I sat anyway. And there he was. My son. Solon wore a suit that fit him too well. Tailored shoulders, crisp collar, tie knotted clean enough to impress any boardroom. His hair was styled in that effortless way that costs money. He was handsome, in a polished, untouchable way. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, knees scraped, cheeks flushed, running down the street with a kite he made from newspapers and plastic bags. But the memory didn't stay long. Beside him stood Varen Locke, poised like a glass dagger. Tall, expensive, every line intentional. Eyes the color of champagne poured too cold. She saw me first. Her lips curved. Not into a smile. Into a conclusion. Solon turned. Mom. His voice carried the tone people use when acknowledging a stranger they vaguely recognize in a grocery aisle. I nodded. Solon. No embrace. No warmth. Doral Finch, the family lawyer, stepped out of the conference room. Older now. Shoulders heavier, mustache grayer. He had been there when Solon was born. He used to slip candy into his shirt pocket for him to discover. Now, he couldn't quite meet my eyes. Riona, he murmured. Right this way. We all sat. Solon sat across from me. Varen sat beside him, touching his arm lightly, her engagement ring held up by the way she placed her hand. Like she wanted it framed. Doral spoke, clearing his throat too many times. As you know, Solon is preparing his estate planning prior to marriage, standard procedure. His voice was professional, but his fingers tapped the table. That told me everything. Varen leaned forward. We simply want everything to be organized. Clean. No complications in the future. Clean. Always that word. Solon didn't look at me when he spoke. Mom, you've always taken care of yourself. And I'll continue to support you emotionally, of course, but financially, things are different now. Varen and I need to think about our future. Our family. Our family. As if I were not sitting right there. Doral slid papers across the table toward me. This is a proposal to reassign estate beneficiary rights. Instead of shared future holdings including family trust properties, Mrs. Hale will receive a modest annual allowance and... Varen interrupted gently. And she won't have to worry about anything. It's really best for everyone. I looked at my son. Not the lawyer. Not the girl with the diamond. Not the shields they built around him. Just him. The boy I held through fevers that nearly took him from me. The boy whose shoes I patched quietly so he wouldn't be embarrassed at school. The boy who used to fall asleep against my shoulder like it was his entire world. His eyes didn't meet mine. "Mom," he said, still looking at the table. "This is normal. Everyone does this." I waited a moment. Let silence do what my voice could not. Then I asked calmly, "And what exactly is being removed?" He swallowed. "Legal inheritance. Future assets. Any claim to marital property. It's just simplification. You don't need those things." A slow exhale left me. Varen smiled, soft, polished, rehearsed. "We're only asking you to sign." Dora looked sick. His hands shook slightly. He knew something they didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tremble. I didn't ask why. I simply said, "I understand." Solon relaxed, relieved. He thought compliance meant acceptance. He had forgotten something about me. He had forgotten quiet isn't the same as weak. They wanted to erase me neatly, fold me out of the picture like an outdated corner of a photograph. But I knew something they didn't. You cannot cut out the roots of a tree and expect it to keep standing. I gathered my purse. And as I did, my fingers brushed the folder inside it. The folder I had brought. The folder I had been saving. I didn't take it out. Not today. Not yet. Some truths are not meant to be thrown like stones. Some are meant to be placed gently on a table and left to speak. I stood. "Thank you for inviting me," I said softly. Solon finally looked at me. For one small second, I saw uncertainty flicker behind his eyes. Good. Let the doubt grow roots. I walked out of the glass building without looking back. Outside, the autumn wind was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of change. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that begins the moment you decide to stop begging to be remembered. There are things I never told Solon. Not because I wanted to hide the truth, but because I wanted him to grow without heaviness in his bones. Some people mistake silence for secrecy, but sometimes silence is just love, held carefully. When Solon was 8, winter came early, the kind of cold that bites skin, not with malice, but with indifference. We lived on the 3rd floor of a building that had been old long before we moved in. The pipes rattled like they were shivering with us, and the windows leaked wind like whispers of places that were warmer and kinder. At tea night, I would place towels against the cracks and stuff newspapers under the door to keep the draft away. It never fully worked. But warmth, sometimes, is less about the temperature and more about presence. Solon slept curled against me, arms wrapped around my waist, small body trusting mine to be enough. Back then, he smiled easily. He laughed as if joy came from the simplest things. Pigeons on the ledge, cartoons with static lines, the smell of fresh roti. He didn't know how the world measured worth. And I was glad. I worked 2 jobs. Day shift at the grocery. Night cleaning offices that smelled of lemon and tired ambition. I didn't complain. Work is work. But there's a certain ache that comes when your body is present but your heart is somewhere else. In a 3rd floor apartment, hoping your child stayed asleep, and didn't wake to an empty room. Some nights I would tiptoe in at dawn, fingers cracked from winter, back heavy, hands stiff from mopping cold floors. And Solon would stir, eyes half open, hair sticking in 10 directions. "Mama," he'd mumble, voice thick with sleep. "You came back." "Always come back," I whispered. That was a promise I kept. Always. Money was tight in the way that always leaves a question hanging in the air. Will there be enough next week? Rice stretched. Lentils stretched more. We ate well enough, just simply. But children don't know simplicity. Children know fullness or hunger. Solon never went hungry. I made sure of that. I wore the same coat for 7 winters. He always had one that fit. I patched my shoes until the soles nearly folded. His were replaced every time he outgrew them. I tell you this not to make myself seem saintly. Love doesn't need applause. I tell you because sacrifice is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, invisible, unthanked. And yeah, it counts. When Solon started school, he excelled quickly. Teachers spoke of his sharp mind, his observant nature. He absorbed everything. The world, language, patterns, expressions. I would sit with him at our small kitchen table, the one with a wobbling leg I never got around to fixing, and watch him draw. He didn't draw superheroes, or castles or cars. He drew buildings. Tall ones. Glass windows. Clean lines. He would say, "One day I'll work in one of those." I would smile. "You will," I answered. "Never maybe. Never if. Always you will." Confidence, when given young, becomes the soil ambition grows in. But ambition needs water. And I didn't have enough money for the school trips, special classes, extra textbooks. That was when the envelopes began to appear. Always slipped under the door late at night. No return address. No writing. Just enough cash for what Solon needed. Nothing more. I knew exactly who they were from. I never told Solon. I told no one. The past has shadows that should not always be dragged into the present. But the man who sent the envelopes, he had once meant something to me. And he loved Solon in the only way he believed he was allowed to. We made an agreement long before. One sealed by circumstance and silence. I kept my side. He kept his. And Solon grew. Fed by sacrifices from two people who lived in different worlds. As Solon got older, the world began teaching him a language I had no fluency in. Status. Presentation. Clean shoes. Clean vowels. The city changed him. Not suddenly, but like rain-smooth stone. Small comments. Little corrections. "Mom, can you not wear that sweater at school events?" It's just, people notice things. I didn't take offense. Children learn to see themselves through the gaze of others. It's not their fault. But slowly, I understood what was happening. He wanted to rise. And he feared that I, with my frayed knitting bags and grocery shoes, would anchor him to where we started. I didn't scold him for it. I just watched. Watched the world trim him into shapes that fit its mold. Yet sometimes, there were flashes of the boy he once was. Like the night it snowed so heavily the streets disappeared, and the city lights blurred into floating halos. We couldn't afford much heat then. The radiator had given up days earlier. Solon took 3 blankets and wrapped them around my shoulders. "I'll keep you warm," he said. Just like I once had. That night, we sat on the floor, backs against the wall, drinking tea I made from boiled cinnamon sticks because we didn't have real tea leaves left. We laughed. We told stories. We dreamed. He rested his head on my shoulder and whispered, "It'll be different one day. I'll take care of you. Properly. I promise." I remember that moment the way people remember the smell of rain before a storm. Because promises made in innocence are the sweetest. And the easiest to break. Years passed. He graduated. Top of his class. Scholarships. Internships. Offices with glass windows. Just like he drew. He rose. And rose. And rose. People clapped. I clapped too. Always. But somewhere along the climb, he stopped looking back. And I did not chase. Love does not beg. Love waits. Love watches. Love learns when to step back. Sometimes I think about those winter nights in our 3rd-floor apartment. How small the rooms were. How cold the air was. How laughter still filled the space as though it were a cathedral. If I had known what was coming, the distance, the dismissals, the quiet erasing, would I have changed anything? No. Because love is not a transaction. It is not a bargain. It is not an investment expecting return. I gave because I loved. But loving someone does not mean you let them forget the truth. And the truth does not rot. It waits. Just like I do. Solon thinks he built himself. He thinks success rose from his talent alone. But soon, very soon, he will learn about the envelopes. He will learn about the sacrifices that didn't have my name on them. He will learn about the man who loved him from far enough away to never cast a shadow. And he will learn that the past cannot be deleted just because it is inconvenient. Not when it is written into who you are. There are women who walk into a room and make you feel as though the lights have shifted to follow them. Not because they are kind, or captivating, or warm, but because they expect the world to adjust itself around their presence. Varen Locke was one of those women. She carried herself like a diamond set in glass. Sharp, immaculate, impossible to approach without seeing your own reflection distorted in her surfaces. The first time I met her, it was at a cafe that charged extra simply because the plates were matte instead of glossy. Solon had insisted. It'll be good for you two to get to know each other, he said. I remember thinking how oddly formal that sounded, as if introducing a business partner, not a woman who intended to build a family with my child. Varen arrived exactly on time, not a minute early, not a second late. Her coat was the type that draped rather than hung, pale beige, soft as expensive whispers, hair pinned in a low knot that said effortless, while clearly requiring 10 products and a mirror with perfect lighting. She offered her hand to me lightly, 2 fingers and a thumb. The kind of handshake that says, I am being polite, but not familiar. Riona, she said, pronouncing my name too carefully, as though it needed refinement. I smiled. Varen. Her eyes flicked over me. Coat, shoes, hair, like a scanner searching for flaws instead of features. I have seen that look before on women who think elegance is something you purchase rather than something you live. She sat, crossed her legs. Perfect posture. Perfect angles. Perfect self. Perfection can be exhausting to maintain. I wondered if she ever allowed herself to exhale fully. I suspected no. Varen came from the kind of family that hosts fundraisers in houses where the chandeliers alone cost more than most people's annual salaries. Her father ran a company that dealt in strategic wealth architecture, which is a polite way of saying he made rich people richer and everyone else invisible. Her mother sat on arts committees and charity boards. Not to help anyone, but to be photographed helping. Their world was one of curated faces and edited histories. Family to them was not love. It was branding. A well-arranged lineage. A narrative polished enough to be displayed. And Solon, brilliant, driven, hungry to rise, fit beautifully into their aesthetic. At least from the outside. She stirred her tea with slow precision. I've heard so much about you, she said. People say that when what they mean is, I've researched you, examined you, and categorized you. I nodded. Solon has spoken about you too. Oh, she lifted a brow. I hope positively. I smiled gently. Speaking itself is a positive sign. It means there is thought. She didn't like that answer. She preferred things measurable, displayable, clear. She tapped her manicured nail on the teacup. You and Solon must have had a very different life before. Different. Not hard. Not poor. Not humble. Different. Class can be polite when it wants to be. Yes, I said. Different is a good word. She leaned in slightly. But now he's in such a strong position. Successful. Established. Seen. There it was. The word that mattered most to her. Seen. Recognition over reality. Presentation over truth. Image over love. I'm very proud of him, I replied. Her lips curved, only halfway. Yes. Though of course now that he's entering a new environment, it's important that everything reflects well. The family, I mean. She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. The message was clear. You do not fit the picture I am creating. I have lived long enough to recognize the shape of rejection before it is spoken aloud. There are many ways to tell someone they are unwelcome. Some use cruelty. Some use silence. Varen used polish, but I didn't resent her. She was simply playing the role the world had trained her for. In her mind, she was building security. Future. Narrative. She believed families were designed, not grown. Chosen, not nurtured. Filtered, not held close. She believed history could be rewritten if it didn't photograph well. But there are things she did not understand. Things she could not understand. I am not ashamed of where I come from. I am not embarrassed of my life. I do not fear being seen. I have been poor. I have been invisible. I have worked until my body shook. But I have never bowed. And there is something dangerous about a woman who has survived without needing to be admired. Because she cannot be controlled. When we left the cafe that day, Varen took Solon's arm lightly, as though she were leading him. He let her. I watched them walk ahead. Clean lines, matching steps, silhouettes that fit neatly together. They looked perfect. But perfection is glass. And glass breaks. I didn't call out to him. I didn't ask him to walk beside me. I simply watched. Because sometimes, the only thing to do is let people choose the world they think they want. Even if that world does not have room for you in it. Not yet. Not anymore. Not until the truth arrives at the table. Quiet. Undeniable. Unavoidable. And I knew one day soon. I would bring the folder. The neighborhood I live in is not glamorous, but it is honest. People there do not need to ask what is happening in someone's life. They can tell by the way you close your door, by how long the hallway light stays on, by the weight of your footsteps on the stairs. Where wealth builds walls, poverty builds windows. And through windows we see each other. My neighbor, Myra Quinn, lived one floor below me. Thin as a reed, hair always pinned back, hands always moving, folding, stirring, sweeping, pointing. Her voice traveled faster than her feet ever could. Myra knew everything about everyone. Not cruelly, just accurately. Life had made her an archivist of stories no one bothered to write down. She didn't ask questions to gossip. She asked because she cared. And because caring is how people like us stay alive. The morning after the meeting at the law firm, I ran into her in the hallway. She was holding a basket of freshly washed laundry, warm steam rising from it, smelling of soap. Her eyes went straight to my face, and I knew she had seen the quiet there. "You went somewhere," she said, not asking. She had a way of speaking that used statements to invite confession. "The law offices," I replied. Myra raised one eyebrow. Just one. That was enough to say, So the story continues. We walked together into her kitchen. She always insisted I sit when something needed to be spoken. The kitchen smelled like cumin and ginger, comfort in scent form. She poured tea without asking my preference. She had known it for years. "You look like someone took something from you," she said softly. I shook my head. "No. They only believe they have." Myra nodded once deeply. She understood the difference. Solon may have grown far from the third-floor hallway with its cracked paint and flickering lights, but the hallway remembered him. The neighbors remembered the boy who waited on the steps for me every evening, swinging his legs and humming to himself. They remembered the fever nights, the scraped knees, the birthday cake made from one egg, a cup of flour and hope. They remembered my quiet perseverance. The neighborhood held stories Solon had stopped carrying. But Myra? She carried them for him. "Your boy came here last week," she told me, stirring the tea. I blinked. He did. Yes. With that girl. The one who looks like she irons her soul every morning. Despite myself, I smiled. Myra continued. "They stood outside your door for a while." She was looking at the walls, the carpets, the mailboxes. She didn't see any of it. She evaluated it. "That sounded like Farron." "What did they say?" I asked. Myra's eyes softened with something like empathy. She asked him, "Did you live like this?" And he didn't answer. He just stood there. I closed my eyes for a moment. Silence is a language too. His silence said everything. He was ashamed. Not of the world that raised him, but of being seen still connected to it. Myra reached out and placed her rough, warm hand over mine. "Child," she said, though I was older than her by years. "You did not raise a cruel boy. Life polished him too hard. Took the softness first." I breathed slowly. "Yes," I said. "They are trying to rewrite the story." "Then you must be the one to tell it," Myra replied. There was no malice in her tone. Only certainty. Later that day, I walked through the neighborhood alone. Past the corner store where Solon once traded marbles for candy. Past the schoolyard where he broke his first pair of shoes playing football on concrete. Past the community center where he learned to read better than the teachers expected. Places hold echoes. If you stand quietly enough, you can hear what you've lost. And what you've kept. I stopped at the bench near the old fig tree. The one where I used to sit while Solon played with the other children. Myra came out of her doorway and stood beside me. "No one forgets you here," she said. I nodded. "But he has." Myra shook her head. "No. He has not forgotten. He has only hidden. People hide what they fear others will judge." I looked at her. "What do I do now?" Myra smiled, small and wise. "You wait. The world turns. Pride cracks. Truth knocks. When it comes, you do not shout. You place it down. Yes. The folder. Waiting for the right moment is not weakness. It is timing. And timing is everything in life, in love, and in reckoning. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and old leather, the kind of place built to make people feel small. Riona knew that feeling too well. She had spent most of her life learning how to fold herself into corners so others could stretch. Solon sat at the head of the table. Not beside her. Not across from her. The head, as if it was already his. Varen lounged beside him, legs crossed like she owned the air in the room. Doral Finch, their family attorney for nearly 20 years, entered with slow, hesitant steps. He was broader now, hair thinner than Riona remembered, but the moment his eyes met hers, he froze. She saw recognition. Not the formal kind. The remembered kind. He set the folder down, cleared his throat, and tried to speak like a professional. As we discussed earlier, Doral said, voice carefully measured, Solon has requested adjustments to the inheritance distribution. Specifically, Varen leaned back, a soft, rehearsed sigh. Solon didn't look at his mother. Not once. Riona didn't flinch. She had spent a lifetime learning when stillness was sharper than rage. Doral's voice wavered. I must state for the record, he continued, that your late husband, Selim, left a handwritten addendum in the file dated 2 months before his passing. Varen's head snapped, eyes narrowing. Solon interrupted. We already discussed discarding that. It wasn't filed properly. Doral hesitated again. His gaze drifted to Riona. And in that hesitation, something old cracked open. A kitchen table. A younger Riona, exhausted, counting out coins. A man at the door offering financial help. Selim's quiet apology. A boy sleeping in his mother's lap. Doral remembered. He had been there. Not as a lawyer. As a friend. Mrs. Riona, he said softly, voice breaking the formal tone completely. It's been a long time. The room went silent. Varen's jaw tightened. Solon's pen stopped tapping. Riona only nodded. She didn't return the sentiment. Not yet. She wanted to see what he would choose. Doral swallowed hard. I will need to verify whether the addendum holds legal weight before any exclusions can be finalized. Solon's voice sharpened, the same tone he used at 12 when he decided he was too old to need affection. We don't need to drag this out. Just proceed. Doral closed his eyes. He knew. He knew this wasn't just paperwork. This was erasure. When he opened his eyes again, something different sat behind them. A memory. That. A shame. He didn't argue. Not yet. Not in front of them. But he didn't look at Solon. He looked at Riona. And looked away. Not because he didn't care. But because he did. Because he remembered the truth Solon refused to acknowledge. Solon didn't rise alone. He was carried. Carried by a mother who sacrificed every piece of herself. And by a man who left something behind for her, not him. As they gathered their things, Varen whispered to Solon. She'll survive. People like her always do. Riona didn't respond. Because some battles aren't won with words. They're won with documents waiting quietly in a drawer. And hers was coming. Soon. The apartment was quiet in the way only old places can be. Walls settling, pipes murmuring like tired bones. Night pressed against the windows, heavy and cold. Riona sat at the small kitchen table, the same one she'd eaten at, worked at, cried at. The same table where Solon once colored dinosaurs and planets and stars. If she closed her eyes, she could still hear his small humming. Funny, how ghosts of joy echo louder than grief. She reached beneath the chair rail molding, a habit, muscle memory. Her fingers slipped into the narrow seam of the wall panel and pulled gently. A click. A shift. A hidden compartment revealed. She drew out the folder. Not thick. Not dramatic. Just ordinary tan paper, the kind you don't look at twice. But inside, history lived. She placed it on the table and didn't open it. Not at first. The kettle clicked off behind her. She didn't move to pour it. Her hands rested flat on the folder. A quiet oath. When she finally opened it, the room seemed to hold its breath. Inside, a letter, written in her husband's handwriting, steady, intentional. A notarized form with her name printed where no one expected it. A second envelope, sealed, addressed in a different hand, careful, looping script. Receipts, small, fading, for amounts that once meant groceries or heating oil or a doctor visit. A signature the same man Solon had forgotten. The same one Solon pretended never mattered. Riona traced the signature with one fingertip. Slow. Tender. Not mourning. Remembering. She whispered, so quietly even the room couldn't repeat it. Not yet. Not because she doubted. Not because she feared him or Varen or the lawyer who looked away. But because timing is everything. And she hadn't carried her life on broken bones for 30 years just to drop her truth in the first round. No. She would wait. For the right moment. For the room where Varen's voice didn't matter. For the look on Solon's face when he finally understood what it cost to rewrite history. Riona closed the folder, slid it back into its place, and pressed the wall panel closed. She poured her tea. Saturday. Breathed. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet felt like strength, not loneliness. The war hadn't begun, but the ending had already been written. In the dark, unseen. Waiting. The restaurant was the kind of place with chandeliers made of blown glass and menus without prices. The kind where quiet elegance was really just another word for money. Riona had never belonged in rooms like this, not because she couldn't enter them, but because people here always acted as if she'd stolen something by merely existing. The hostess smiled too politely, the way someone smiles when they've been told to. Riona smoothed her coat and walked inside. The engagement dinner was already underway. Laughter, loud, polished, expensive, floated through the air like perfume. At the head of the table sat Varen and Solon. Solon didn't stand to greet her. He lifted a hand in a half-wave, half-dismissal. "Mother, you made it," he said, as if her being here required explanation. Riona took the open seat at the far end, the one without a name card. Varen's mother, Lady Caristelle Vane, was the first to speak. "Oh," she said, smiling as though tasting something sour. "You're Solon's mother. How quaint. Just one word. But entire wars have been started with less." Riona smiled back, polite, neutral, unreadable. Caristelle kept going. "We've heard so much about you. Solon says you were." She paused, searching for a delicate word that didn't exist. "Resourceful. During his upbringing." Varen laughed. "His mother worked 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. Quite a story, really. Inspiring." The table murmured the kind of praise that wasn't praise at all. Someone asked what she did now. "I work at the community library," Riona said simply. A cousin leaned back, sipping expensive wine. "A librarian. How wholesome." Another voice chimed in softer, but not kind. "It must feel overwhelming here. These kinds of events, etiquette, cutlery, courses." She gestured vaguely toward the table settings, as if they were a language too complex for Riona's world. Riona looked at the cutlery. 3 forks, 2 knives, 1 spoon. She had cleaned enough silverware at diners to know more about table placement than any of them. But she didn't defend herself. Because defense is what people demand when they want you ashamed. Varen leaned in, her voice just loud enough. "Don't worry, Mother Riona. You'll learn." Riona met her eyes. She had seen Varen's type her whole life. Girls who learned beauty before kindness. Smiles sharpened into blades. Love used like currency. But the person she looked to was Solon. Her son. The boy she used to carry on her hip while she counted change for rent. The boy who once held her hand crossing icy sidewalks. He stared at his plate. He didn't defend her. He didn't redirect. He didn't object. He let it happen. A toast was raised. A photographer asked everyone to get closer for a picture. Riona remained where she was. Varen said brightly, "Come up front. Next to us." The photographer hesitated. He looked at Riona's coat. Her hair. Her shoes. And then he said, softly to Varen, not meant to be heard, "Maybe the family shot first?" Riona heard. Of course she did. She nodded once and stepped back. The photograph was taken without her. Solon didn't look up. The camera clicked. Varen's mother clapped lightly. "Lovely. Now that's a family portrait." Riona left early. No one stopped her. She walked home slowly. Not defeated. Not broken. Just quiet. The street lights flickered overhead. Cold air brushed her face. Her hands were steady at her sides. She did not cry. Because humiliation is not the same as loss. She had already lost something far deeper than pride. And soon, Solon was going to learn what losing truly felt like. Not because she wanted revenge, but because the truth was already written in a folder hidden behind a wall. And life has a way of letting truth find daylight. Eventually, the walk home was quiet. No trembling hands. No tears pressed down behind eyelids. No echoing humiliation replaying itself like a wound being touched again and again. Just footsteps. Measured. Even. A steady rhythm across cold sidewalks. Riona unlocked her apartment door. The lock clicked like it had thousands of times before, but tonight, it sounded final. She slipped off her coat, hung it neatly, set her purse down. Every motion was deliberate calm. The kind of calm that comes after pain. Not before. She moved through her home like someone who had lived many lives inside it, worn but unbroken. A knock tapped softly at the door. Of course. Myra, the neighbor who always appeared exactly when silence grew too loud. Riona opened the door. Myra didn't speak right away. She didn't ask questions. She didn't gasp or fuss or widen her eyes in pity. She simply looked at Riona, really looked, and stepped inside. The kettle was already on. Neither of them remembered turning it on. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one that had held overdue bills, homework sheets, grocery lists written in pen that ran because of damp winter air. Steam rose from the tea. Myra spoke first, gently. Something happened. Not a question. Riona nodded. His engagement dinner. Myra exhaled with the kind of tired understanding that comes from seeing patterns repeat themselves in other women's lives. How bad? Myra asked. Riona's answer was simple. They didn't see me as his mother. Just history. Myra flinched. Not dramatically. Just a small tightening of her fingers around her mug. And Solon, she asked. Riona didn't look away. He let them. Silence settled again. But not an ugly silence. A truthful one. Myra stared into her tea. Then she said something she had clearly been holding for a long time. I need you to know something. And I'm not saying it to hurt you. Riona waited. Varen's family, they don't just care about status. They maintain it. They've been telling people that Solon is restructuring his family ties. That he's distancing himself from anything that could be seen as... Myra hesitated, but Riona didn't save her from the word. Ordinary. Riona nodded once. Calm. Myra continued. And the inheritance, they're pushing to have everything moved directly under Solon's name. They're saying that you wouldn't know how to manage significant assets. Riona's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. Myra's voice broke in frustration. They're trying to erase you, Riona. Not just socially. Legally. Financially. They want you gone. Cleanly. Riona still didn't react. Not numb. Not stunned. Just quiet acceptance. Like someone who finally hears out loud what they had known in their bones long before. Myra put her mug down too hard. Tea splashed over the rim. How can you be calm right now? How are you not screaming? Riona looked at her, not with sadness, with clarity. Because I already lost him, she said softly. The kettle clicked. A car passed outside. Life continued. Myra swallowed. You can't keep saying he's just influenced. Or pressured. Or misguided. He made choices too. This time, Riona didn't defend him. She didn't say, he's overwhelmed. He's under stress. He's confused. He'll come back around. All those old, weary lines mothers used to keep their hearts from splitting open. No. Riona set her hands on the table. Steady, he made a choice, she said. So I'm making one. Myra's eyes shone. Not pity. Respect. Fear. Realization. What will you do? She asked. Riona didn't look toward the hidden wall panel. She didn't have to. It waited silently, just as she had. I'll let him see who he is, she said. Not punishment. Not revenge. Consequence. And then, Myra whispered. Riona answered with the kind of softness that shakes rooms. I will stop carrying him. The words were quiet, but the world shifted with them. Because there is nothing louder than a mother putting her hands down. No pleading. No reaching. No explaining. No shielding him from himself. just letting him stand in the life he chose. Myra nodded, tears in her eyes, not because she was sad, but because she understood. This was the moment the story changed. Not with shouting, not with slamming doors, but with a woman sitting at her kitchen table, drinking warm tea, finally allowing herself to stop trying to save someone who did not want to be saved. Riona breathed in. Slow. Free. When a mother stops defending, she said quietly, she stops losing. The night was still. The house was calm. Somewhere across the city, Solon slept soundly, unaware that something had ended, but he would feel it soon. Not guilt. Just discomfort. The kind that comes when the person who held your world together finally steps back and lets it fall. The conference room was the same as before, polished wood, glass walls, stage sunlight that never quite warmed the air. But something was different this time. Riona didn't shrink. She walked in without hesitation, coat folded over her arm, posture steady. Not proud. Not defeated. Just present. Varen's family was already seated. Carousel in pearls. A father who spoke through nods. Varen immaculate in white, as if purity were something you could wear like fabric. Solon sat at the head again. But this time, his posture was tight. His shoulders were too straight. His jaw clenched too long. He felt the distance, the one Riona had stopped trying to close. Doral Finch, the attorney, shuffled papers. He would not look at her. Not yet. The document sat on the table. Smooth, official, cruelly simple. Removal of maternal inheritance rights. Clean. Cold. Done with a pen stroke. Varen smiled the way women smile when they believe they've already won. Let's proceed, she said. No greeting. No acknowledgement. Doral cleared his throat. If both parties agree to the terms presented, then. Riona interrupted him, not with volume, just with presence. No need to rush. She reached into her bag. Not dramatic. No flourish. Just a quiet motion made by hands that had folded laundry, packed lunches, wiped fevered foreheads, and held a child through storms. She placed the folder on the table. The sound was soft, but it hit the room like a dropped stone. Solon's breath caught, so slight no one else noticed. But Riona saw. Doral stiffened. Caroustel's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened, a predator scenting something off. Varen leaned forward. What is that? Riona didn't look at her. She looked only at Doral. Open it. Doral's hands trembled. Just once. He opened the folder. Inside. The handwritten addendum with Selim's signature. The notarized directive confirming the inheritance belonged to Riona first, not Solon. The letter explaining why. Doral's breath left him. He looked up, finally meeting Riona's eyes. And in that look was 20 years of memory. Debt. Regret. A promise left too long in the dark. Caroustel's voice sliced the air. This is not legally admissible. That paper wasn't filed proper. Doral cut her off, his voice quiet but heavier than the room could bear. It was filed. Silence. It sat there. Thick. Inescapable. Undeniable. Solon finally spoke, voice too controlled. Mother, what are you doing? Riona didn't answer him. She turned to Doral. Read it. All of it. Doral's voice cracked only once, on the part where Selim wrote. She has carried more than any person should. The estate is hers first. Our son will learn from what remains, not from what he believes he is owed. Varen's face drained of color. Carousel went still, too still. Solon's world, the one he built carefully on pride and distance, tilted. But Riona didn't look at him. Not out of anger. Out of release. She stood. I won't contest what Solon chooses to do with his life, she said. But he will not rewrite mine. She walked out. No raised voice. No slammed door. Just the quiet sound of a mother closing the story. The phone rang. Solon. Riona let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then she answered. His voice was tight, not remorseful. Why didn't you tell me? Riona didn't sigh. She didn't soften. You never asked. Silence crackled on the line. You made me look like a fool in front of them, he said. Riona closed her eyes. There it was. Even now, it was about them. Not her. Never her. I didn't have to, she said. You did that yourself. His breath hitched, not wounded. Exposed. You're still my mother, he said, as if the title itself could patch things back together. Riona didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was steady, gentle, final. I was. A soft inhale from him, small, involuntary. The kind a child makes when a hand lets go. Riona didn't hang up. She simply set the phone down on the table. The line stayed open. But the connection was already gone. News doesn't always spread in shouts. Sometimes it travels in whispers. And whispers travel faster. The wedding planning had been moving at the speed of prestige. Carousel had booked a cathedral whose stained glass windows were older than the city itself. Varen had chosen imported lilies flown in weekly, so they arrived already blooming. There were meetings with couturiers, menus composed by chefs with names no one could pronounce, photographers who shot royalty, and musicians flown in from capitals that never slept. It was supposed to be a spectacle. It became a spectacle. Just not the one they wanted. It started with a call. Not to Riona. To Carousel. From one of her own society friends. A soft, casual voice. I didn't know the groom's inheritance was tied to his mother's legal standing. It's strange. I thought he was self-made. Carousel froze. Because that wasn't gossip. That was information. Which meant someone talked. Which meant control had cracked. The first fracture. Varen confronted Solon in their loft, the high ceiling echoing their voices back at them. You said your father was irrelevant, Varen hissed. He is, Solon snapped. Or tried to snap. But his voice didn't carry the same certainty. Varen threw the open folder down on the glass table, the one Doral had reluctantly sent over once the documents were entered into record. Letters. Trust deeds. Legal transfers. Signatures. A name repeated across every line. Alden Ray. Not Selim. Not the man Solon had been told walked away. Not the ghost he had learned to resent. Alden Ray, his biological father. The man who had loved Riona before the world said he shouldn't. A man from a family who believed that love needed pedigree, and Riona did not have one. The man who left money, not out of guilt, but to protect both of them from being swallowed by a legacy that devoured its own. He funded Solon's schooling. His first business investment. The internship that led to the job that led to the network that built his success story. All quietly. All documented. All funneled through Riona. Because Eldon had trusted her. Not Solon. Not the world. Her. Varen stared at him, voice sharp and shaking. So your entire life, your degree, your start, your company, was paid for by a man you told everyone didn't matter. A man you never even asked about. Solon didn't defend himself. Because the truth sat too cleanly in front of him. Removing Riona from the inheritance didn't just cut her out. It cut himself off from the foundation of his entire life. The trust was in her name. The continuation of it required her presence. Without Riona, Solon had nothing. Carousel tried to spin it. She tried to claim. Riona manipulated Eldon. Riona plotted this. Riona trapped them. But paperwork does not care for pride. The trust spelled it clearly. Funds are to be stewarded by Riona. Solon receives only what she authorizes. If she is removed by coercion, fraud, or duress, the trust dissolves entirely. No money. No status. No prestige. Just truth. And truth is expensive. The breaking point. The venue called. The deposit had been withdrawn. The florist followed. The musicians. The designer. Nobody likes to attach themselves to a sinking reputation. Varen's voice cracked when she said, "We can fix this if you just talk to her. If you just get her back in line." Solon didn't reply. Because he didn't know how. For the first time in his life, his mother was not waiting for him to come home. Riona alone, but not lonely. In her kitchen, she was wiping down the counter. The kettle steamed softly. No celebration. No satisfaction. Just quiet. Because the point was never to win. The point was to stop losing. Her phone buzzed. Solon. She let it ring. Once. Twice. On the third ring, she answered. His voice was different now. Not angry. Not proud. Not broken. Just bare. Mom. I didn't know. Riona closed her eyes. I know, she said. He inhaled sharply, like a child again. What do I do? And Riona, who had always given answers, finally gave him the only real one. That's for you to figure out. She didn't hang up. She didn't need to. He understood it was the end of the call. Because when a mother stops defending, the child must finally learn how to stand. The house is quiet when Solon arrives. Not their old apartment. That place is long gone, replaced by a small sunlit flat above a tailor shop. A place Riona chose for herself. No photos of him on the walls. No reminders. Just plants, warm wood, and the quiet satisfaction of a life no longer spent waiting for someone else to call. She opens the door before he knocks twice. Solon stands there, expensive suit, jaw clenched, eyes tired from a week of public damage control and private collapse. Can we talk? He asks, voice hoarse. Riona steps aside. Not welcoming, just allowing. He sits. She doesn't. She stands by the window, hands relaxed, gaze steady. The same posture she held when watching storms roll in, preparing for whatever came. I didn't know, he starts. About Alden. About the trust. About the letters. You should have told me. Riona breathes, slow. Even she is not here to convince him of her suffering. She already survived it. You were a child, she says. You were supposed to be free to love who raised you. But if I had known, you still would have wanted something better than where we started, she says gently. And I would have still wanted that for you. Solon looks up at her, something like grief twisting his face. I didn't mean to hurt you. Riona doesn't soften. Not cruel, just honest. You didn't think of me at all, she replies. And that is the part that did the hurting. Silence stretches, not sharp, just real. He swallows. Can we fix this? Riona finally sits. Not closer, not farther, just where she is. I'm not asking you to apologize, she says. And I don't want you to feel guilt. Guilt only makes people cling. I'm not something you get to cling to. Solon's breath stumbles. He realizes, this is not punishment. This is release. You may continue your life, Riona says, voice soft and steel-edged. But you will not rewrite mine. Not who I was. Not what I carried. Not what I paid. Not what I endured so you could rise. His eyes sting, not childish tears, the kind that come when truth meets bone. She stands again, signaling the end. Go be the man you claim you want to be, she says. He stands, but he doesn't leave immediately. He looks at her the way a child looks at the door of a home they never understood until they'd already packed their bags. Mom, he whispers. Riona meets his gaze, warm, but no longer waiting. Goodbye, Solon. He nods once. A small, broken nod. Then he walks out. Riona closes the door. No shaking hands. No tears. Just a long, steady exhale. And peace. The kind built on finally choosing yourself. Morning comes softly now. No alarms. No double shifts. No racing buses across icy streets. Riona wakes when the light finds her, warm, gentle, unhurried. Her new life is small by comparison to the one she once imagined for herself. But it is hers. She teaches embroidery at a community center 2 blocks away, the kind of place where people talk softly and listen deeply. The women there know her story in bits and pieces, but they never ask for more. They understand the weight of things that don't need retelling. On Thursdays, she tends to a quiet strip of garden behind the building. Rosemary, basil, jasmine, things that want to live if someone simply remembers to water them. She is good at remembering. She has always been. And on weekends, she reads at the cafe on the corner, not to escape, but to be in her own mind again. A luxury she once didn't have the space for. People smile when they see her. They call her by her name, not someone's mother, not someone's burden, not someone's stepping stone. Just Riona. Sometimes, across the street, there is a figure lingering, hesitant, unsure. Solon. He never approaches. He never calls out. He is learning something for the first time. Not everything is owed to him. He stands there with the posture of a man who realizes the door he shut was not the one he thought, that the thing he tried to remove was the foundation he stood on. He watches her laugh with the woman from the fabric shop. He watches her bag basil and rosemary with a smile that no longer strains. He watches her move like someone who no longer carries the weight of being needed just to be kept. He watches, because he finally understands. Peace is not what she found. Peace is what she chose. And choices like that are not reversible. One afternoon, he turns to leave after watching her for a while. He doesn't expect forgiveness anymore. He simply hopes he has learned from the breaking. Inside, Riona places a vase of fresh jasmine on her table. She does not glance out the window to see if anyone is watching. Her life is facing forward now. And peace, real peace, does not look back.